Welcome to NTD News. I'm Kevin Hogan. Here are today's top stories. President Biden ends another Trump-era immigration policy, and a key Democrat senator visits the border. What does he think needs to be done about the crisis? A mother was wounded trying to protect her 9-year-old son who was killed in a California mass shooting. But what sets this shooting apart from the other two within the last month? New York may not be the only state hiding numbers on nursing home deaths during the pandemic. A group of GOP congressmen are after the information from 4 additional states. But why aren't they getting any answers? And President Joe Biden still hasn't set a date for when he will address a joint session of Congress, even though it's already several months past the usual time frame. We give you the latest from the White House. The Biden administration is ending another Trump-era immigration rule. It announced yesterday it will now accept certain immigration applications even if they aren't completely filled out.
The Biden administration announced Thursday it will end a Trump-era rule that automatically rejected certain immigration applications. During the Trump administration, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services would reject applications for asylum or immigration benefits when a blank space was left on the forms. Examples of fields that might be left blank include middle name, passport, or travel document number, and other names used. The USCIS confirmed Thursday that for all forms it has reverted to the pre-Trump policy regarding blank responses. The Heritage Foundation's immigration policy tracker shows that President Biden has reversed most of Trump's immigration policies. That includes stopping border wall construction, limiting ICE agents with narrower guidelines, and suspending most deportations for 100 days. Democratic Senator Joe Manchin gave his reaction after touring the border Thursday.
And what we're seeing today, and the mass of people coming, especially the children, it's something that's going to continue until we do something about it.
He didn't blame Trump or Biden for the current crisis, but he said that the United States should be vetting asylum-seekers before they come. He said it's safer, more humane, and more cost-effective.
How's that going to happen? Well, we're going to have to be what some people might interpret as being very difficult, very strong, very, very tough. And by being tough, we're going to be tough on crime.
And U.S. authorities are working with Mexico to identify who dropped 2 young children off a border fence earlier this week. Human rights group director says don't be fooled. Human smugglers aren't doing children any favors.
It could result in serious damage. They could have fractures from the fall, and in worst case, they can die from a fall from that height.
Border Patrol also found a group which included over 80 unaccompanied minors in Arizona this week. Most were from Guatemala. President Biden tapped Vice President Kamala Harris to lead the efforts to curb the flow of migration. The White House says she's currently only focusing on the root causes of migration, not the border.
A mother tried to protect her 9-year-old son who was killed in the mass shooting near Los Angeles this week. And the suspected gunman apparently knew all of his victims beforehand. Here are the details.
Authorities found out that the suspected gunman in Wednesday's violence knew all of his victims and had a family relationship with at least one of them. There were 3 deadly mass shootings in March, but the shootings in Orange, California is a little different than the other 2. The shooters in Georgia and Colorado are believed to have killed their victims at random, but in the California attack, the suspect knew the victims beforehand, according to officials. A spokeswoman for the Orange Police Department said the preliminary motive is believed to be related to a business and personal relationship which existed between the suspect and all of the victims. Police said they're not releasing the names of the victims until the families are notified. Authorities said the surviving victim was a woman who worked at the business when the shooting happened. She had cradled her son in her arms as he was fatally shot. The suspect in the California shooting has been identified as Amanadab Gaxiola Gonzalez, who is 44 years old. He was critically wounded in the attack, but it's not clear if he wounded himself or if police shot him. Gonzalez drove a rental car and stayed at a motel in Anaheim, which is next to Orange. According to police, he locked the 2 entrances of the office building with bicycle locks before the attack. The shooting happened around 5:30 p.m. Police said he targeted people at Unified Homes, and the police released a photo showing the gunman inside the business, wearing a bandana and holding what appears to be a semi-automatic handgun. Police say his backpack contained ammo, pepper spray, and handcuffs. The suspect has been arrested and an investigation is ongoing.
Pennsylvania Representative Mike Kelly and GOP colleagues are seeking information about nursing home deaths from the CCP virus. Kelly says they've sent repeated requests to 4 states, but they aren't getting any response. Pennsylvania Representative Mike Kelly told the Epoch Times he's sent 4 states multiple requests for data on nursing home deaths and hasn't heard anything. He and a group of GOP colleagues are asking Michigan, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and California for the information. Critics say these states use similar approaches to New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. Cuomo required nursing homes in his state to take in residents infected with the CCP virus. Critics say this caused many additional deaths. Cuomo is also accused of hiding the number of deaths caused by the virus in nursing homes. The FBI is investigating him. The other 4 states all have Democrat governors. Kelly says his state of Pennsylvania had almost identical policies to New York. He says the only problem is we can't look at the data, and because of that, he has real concerns that something is going on that should not be going on. Rachel Levine was Pennsylvania's Secretary of Health before she joined the Biden administration. She testified that there's a time lag between the time of deaths and when they get reported. Local TV station 11 News reporter Angie Moreski says the missing data goes back to May. Kelly says that when data is too old, it becomes useless for steering policy. He questions if the officials involved wanted to put out a certain message, and it didn't matter if they had the facts to back it up. President Joe Biden has yet to give the traditional presidential address to Congress this year. The annual report traditionally occurs at the beginning of the year.
Biden held his first press conference over 2 months into his term. He has yet to meet in person with a foreign head of state and hasn't given the annual State of the Union address to Congress. The White House hasn't scheduled a date for the speech. Press Secretary Jen Psaki says Biden is considering it.
He is definitely considering giving a joint session address. I can't wait till we finally announce this because I know you all really want a date.
Biden said he would give the address in February. Psaki says there was never an official date. Nancy Pelosi blames the delay on the pandemic. She says the sergeants at arms and Capitol physician are involved in the decision, and that Congress will extend the invitation when the president is ready. Biden's chief of staff, Ron Klain, said the administration wanted to get the pandemic-driven spending bill passed first. He also noted that the speech would be held shortly after that. Biden signed the bill on March 11th. Pelosi says she hopes the address will come soon.
If you're concerned about the number of executive orders going through, you're not alone. Utah Senator Mike Lee is too. He says the U.S. president has had too much power for far too long and that it's unconstitutional. He spoke on Wednesday about efforts to give some of that power back to Congress.
President Biden has issued 37 executive orders so far. On January 20th, just hours after his inauguration, Biden signed 17 executive actions covering immigration and a wide range of issues. Between 2017 and 2021, President Donald Trump issued 220 executive orders. And going further back over their 2 terms each, President Barack Obama issued 276 and President George W. Bush issued 291 executive orders.
It's resulted in the excessive accumulation of power in the hands of the few. It has gored Republican and Democratic oxen alike. It is ultimately bad for the people, and it is a nonpartisan and bipartisan issue at once.
When political decisions are being handled by executive branches, how does the people's will get translated into government action? Senator Mike Lee voiced concern at the Hoover Institution Wednesday.
And the people are taken completely outside the process. And then it's not only anti-constitutional, but it becomes fundamentally anti-democratic.
In February this year, Lee introduced a bill, the Article 1 Act, to reclaim congressional powers.
The Supreme Court unanimously dismisses Florida's water lawsuit against Georgia. It ends the long-running legal fight between the 2 states. The case involved 2 rivers in Georgia. Both of them joined to form a new river at the Florida line. The court rejected Florida's claim that Georgia uses too much water from its rivers and that the alleged overuse has decimated Florida's oyster industry. Last year, Florida voted to halt oyster harvesting in affected waters. Justice Amy Coney Barrett wrote that Florida failed to prove its case and that the case had been before the court twice in the past 3 years. Georgia officials say the court's decision proves their water management is fair. The Florida Agricultural Commission called the ruling disappointing. The Texas Senate has passed 3 bills in the past 3 days. They aim at protecting election integrity, freedom of speech online, and the lives of unborn children. NTD's Grace Coulter has the story.
The Republican-led Texas Senate has passed a bill targeting mail-in ballots. This in the wake of controversy surrounding voting practices in the November 3rd election. State Senator Brian Hughes, who introduced the bill, said it was passed around 2 a.m. Thursday morning after several hours of debate. He calls it an omnibus election integrity bill.
This bill is about making it easy to vote and hard to cheat.
The bill further restricts mail-in voting, bars local governments from sending out mail-in ballot applications, bans mail ballot drop boxes, cuts extended voting days, and requires greater transparency of private funding given to election departments. Senate Democrats accuse the Republicans of engaging in so-called voter suppression. On the same day, the Texas Senate passed a bill that fights back against big tech censorship. Senator Hughes, who also introduced this legislation, spoke with NTD when first drafting the bill.
Any Texan who is knocked offline, who is deplatformed, who is punished for their free speech, for exercising their freedom of religion or talking about politics, any kind of protected speech you can think of, if they're taken offline for that reason, it gives them a recourse.
If the bill is signed into law, deplatformed Texans would be able to get a court order requiring social media platforms to restore their accounts. And on Tuesday, the Texas Senate passed the Heartbeat Bill to protect the lives of unborn children. The bill would ban abortion after a fetal heartbeat is detected. All 3 bills will now head to the Texas House of Representatives, where they are likely to face pushback from both Democrats and outside interest groups. Grace Coulter, NTD News.
Efforts to recall a socialist city council member in Washington state can move forward. That's according to Washington's Supreme Court. Seattle City Council member Kshama Sawant is accused of abusing her office and violating code. For example, she allegedly let a group of protesters into City Hall using her passkey. Last September, a county judge ruled that the charges against Sawant were factually and legally sufficient for recall efforts to proceed. Sawant's campaign blamed big business and right-wing influence for the recall effort, but the chairman of the recall committee, a Democrat, pushed back against that claim. The Seattle Times reports that the group needs 10,000 signatures in 180 days to then hold a vote to remove Sawant from office. And just ahead, toxic chemicals are discovered at a high school in Burlington, Vermont. Students are getting used to attending class at a mall for the time being. And daredevils and theme park lovers delight as Florida amusement parks start to reopen. Six Flags and Legoland are now welcoming back excited visitors after a year-long shutdown. All that and more on NTD News. Baseball is back in New York. Yankee Stadium opened for the first time in nearly 18 months as fans cheered their Bronx Bombers and a return to somewhat normal life again.
Yankee Stadium's gates swung open on Thursday for the first time in nearly 18 months as emotional fans welcomed back their Bronx Bombers after a season played to empty stands amid the COVID-19 pandemic.
We are ecstatic. We're so glad to be back.
It's the latest hint that life may slowly be getting back to normal for Julie Rosen, who is one of some 9,000 fans allowed inside the stadium, which opened to 20% capacity. To enter required proof of either a COVID-19 vaccine or negative test. Opening day comes a little more than a year since Major League Baseball announced it was putting its 2020 season on hold, which resulted in a financial hit of more than $6 billion. But to give fans stuck at home some form of entertainment, last summer the MLB kicked off a shortened 60-game season, played entirely without fans in the stands, though attendees were later permitted at the playoffs. This season will see a return to the standard 162-game format, with fans allowed to attend games for all 30 teams. Though there were early signs on Thursday that the season would be anything but business as usual. The Washington Nationals' home opener against the New York Mets had to be put on hold after the Nationals said one of their players tested positive for COVID-19, while 4 others and a staff member were in quarantine following contact tracing.
School's back, and it's not how the students at a Vermont school remember it. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
Most of the students have been here before, but not for class. This used to be a Macy's department store. Now it's a school.
I definitely didn't expect to be going to high school in a mall. Me a year ago would never have predicted that this was how my senior year would look.
The existing Burlington High School was closed last August after toxic industrial chemicals known as PCBs were found in the building. That left students learning remotely for much of the school year during the pandemic. School officials considered the closed Macy's store, and in-person learning started there this month. Partitions were added for classrooms, while some hints of the building's past remain, like the Calvin Klein and Michael Kors signs.
It's hard for me that we can't go out and come back in between classes. I mean, it makes sense because of safety protocols and COVID restrictions and everything, but it's definitely hard for me not getting to be in the sunlight, especially there's no windows.
The back wall of one classroom features a giant Levi Strauss & Co. poster. The library is housed in the former Macy's China department, with books displayed on dimly lit shelves. It's a change for the teachers, too. The entrance to the interim principal's office has a sign on the top of the door, labeling it as a sprinkler control valve room.
When our director of property services told me about Macy's, I said, no way, we can't do that. But the more we learned, it's possible. And we're learning that it's kind of getting back to normal. Even though we're in the mall, we have a high school in the mall, we're also...
For now, the district has leased the building for 3.5 years. After learning remotely for much of the year, several students said they're happy to reconnect with their peers and be part of the community. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
A restaurant owner in Southern California is banning masks inside. It's a way to protest against lockdowns and demand freedom.
Tony Roman owns an Italian restaurant in Huntington Beach, California. While other establishments around him request customers to wear masks, he bans them inside his restaurant, saying they remind him of the lockdown.
I feel if they went away, the lockdown would have ended. I also feel that they represent fear, control, and surrender, so I never want to see him in the restaurant.
Roman says he wants his business to serve as a constitutional battleground in the fight for freedom. The restaurant offered indoor and outdoor dining throughout the pandemic and never shut down. Because of this, he has received multiple threats.
I've had death threats where people want to put a bullet in my head and kill me. People want to burn our restaurant down. People want to spread the virus inside the restaurant, any virus, and I have a criminal case against us. We have alcohol-related violations where they want to take our very valuable license away from us.
He says the government uses lockdown mandates to control people with fear, so he will not back down. The restaurant hosted the Recall Newsom 2020 campaign after the movement decided to hold a celebration for verifying over 1 million signatures.
It's not just a restaurant anymore. It's like a movement, and people want to be here at the restaurant because they feel they can connect with other patriots, American patriots who believe in what they believe in.
Roman and his employees are adamant about not letting the government or police execute a search warrant and intend to keep the restaurant open.
The important thing is you're going to win some battles and lose some battles. But when you're fighting for freedom, it's what's most important that you win the war in the end. And that's what our plan is.
Visitors from near and far ate at his restaurant during the past year. Eileen Eng, NTD News.
Good news for theme park lovers in California. After a year of closed doors, the iconic attractions are back in action. Visitors are welcome starting this month with some restrictions.
Theme parks in Southern California began reopening Thursday after almost a year-long closure. Six Flags Magic Mountain, 30 miles north of Los Angeles, was one of the first to open its doors. There, excited daredevils lined up, eager for the thrill of the rides.
It's pretty good. I've been missing this place for 13 months. It's nice to be, I'm a big theme park fan, so it's nice to be able to go ahead and, ride some rides again. Even just walk around, it's pretty nice.
California health officials have allowed theme and amusement parks to restart operations on April 1st with severely limited capacity. But that's only if the counties where they operate are removed from the most stringent purple tier, part of California's color-coded pandemic classification system.
It feels pretty good. It's nice to actually be out again and feel somewhat normal, even though, got the precautions and running every other train or things like that. It takes a little getting used to, but better than being stuck at home, that's for sure.
Masks and other safety measures are still required, and the parks will initially only open to state residents. Attendance would range from 15% to 35% of normal capacity.
So we are contactless from the point where you get your temperature checked, contactless through the security screening. We have plexi barriers up at our ticket booths. On the coasters, we are skipping every other row. Only groups who are allowed to be together will ride together.
In the coastal community of Carlsbad, south of Los Angeles, Legoland also opened its doors on Thursday after months spent closed. Other theme parks scheduled to reopen in Southern California include Universal Studios on April 16th and Disneyland on April 30th. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
An accident strikes a school bus full of students in Virginia. Officials say no one was injured after a deer crashed through the bus's windshield on the way to school. An onboard surveillance camera captured the incident Thursday morning. It shows the deer flying through the windshield and landing on a student who was asleep in a seat. The deer then starts jumping around the bus. That's before the driver opened the door to let the animal out. Miraculously, the deer appeared to be unharmed. And up next, a derailed train in Taiwan kills dozens of people. It's their worst train disaster in almost 4 decades. And a mouthpiece for the Chinese regime is suspected of using a fake French reporter to spread its propaganda, though some are taking it as an April Fool's Day joke. Stay tuned to find out more.
If you're like me, and I think it's actually most of us, then you get... If you're like me, and I think it's actually most of us, then you're getting really fed up with the nonsense going on inside the banking system. I mean, we've worked hard our entire lives to retire comfortably. We just recovered from the crash of 2008, and it seems like it's about to happen all over again. Look at the too-big-to-fail banks. They're only getting bigger as the Fed hands them trillions of dollars daily, while simple folks like you and me, we're only getting the short end of the stick. That's why I'm glad I found this book called The Bank Failure Survival Guide. Give us a call, and we'll send you a free copy with no obligations whatsoever, just one American to another, telling you about some options that you might not have considered. Call 866-239-2619 today for your free copy of The Bank Failure Survival Guide. That's 866-239-2619.
Here's what a reader writes to best-selling author James Cook about his new book, The Great Gold Comeback, Bankruptcy of the Welfare State. There is no way I could ever properly express my thanks to you for the Gold Comeback book and all that you have written within it. What a real treasure. Get this hard-hitting volume absolutely free. It covers economics, inflation, socialism, welfarism, capitalism, crashes, panics, interventionism, and crisis. Regularly $29. Yours free. Call 1-800-328-1860.
An express train in Taiwan with almost 500 people on board derailed in a tunnel today. At least 50 passengers died in the incident and nearly 150 were injured. It's the island's worst rail disaster in almost 4 decades.
A train in Taiwan has derailed inside a tunnel, killing dozens of people. Around 70 passengers are still trapped, and 40 others have been taken to hospital in what is Taiwan's worst rail disaster in at least 4 decades. The train had been travelling from Taipei to Taitung when it apparently hit a truck and came off the rails north of Hualien. Images of the crash scene show carriages inside the tunnel ripped apart from the impact. Taiwan's fire department said there had been some 350 people on board the train. Many of them were reported to have been standing because it was so full. More than 80 people have been evacuated from the first 4 carriages, but the others are harder to reach. The accident happened at the start of the long weekend for the traditional Tomb Sweeping Day. The last major train derailment in Taiwan was in 2018, which left 18 people dead.
The national security advisors of the U.S., Japan, and South Korea will have a three-way talk today. An expert tells us what this meeting may mean.
On Friday, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan will meet his counterparts from Japan and South Korea for a trilateral dialogue in Washington. It will be the first of these three-way talks under the Biden administration. The White House says they will consult on a wide range of regional issues and priorities, including maintaining peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula. Some experts see this as a good move.
It allows the three countries to coordinate policies and also sends I think, a public message of that the U.S. is conferring with its allies, showing the importance of alliances.
A UN report released on Wednesday says North Korea continued cyber attacks to fund its nuclear and missile programs. The virtual assets stolen by the regime between 2019 and late 2020 are reportedly worth more than $300 million U.S.
Many people don't realize that such a seemingly backward technologically country as North Korea has a very good cyber attack capability, top 3 or 4 in the world.
Klinger assumes that North Korea will conduct major provocative tests this year, as they did with every new U.S. administration. And he expects the Biden administration's response will be a continuation of what U.S. policy has been with North Korea for decades, a combination of putting pressure on the regime and opening up dialogue and offering benefits.
This year, even the Chinese Communist Party is taking notice of April Fool's Day, but it seems the apparent jokes went too far. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has more on the story.
This year, even the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, is taking notice of April Fool's Day. April 1st is usually filled with outlandish claims and jokes, especially on social media. But netizens seem particularly suspicious about one Weibo post shared by Xinhua News Agency, the Communist Party's media mouthpiece. They say it could be a joke, but now it seems some have taken it too far. The Xinhua Post reads, "Today is the so-called April Fool's Day in the West. April Fool's Day does not conform to our Chinese cultural traditions and the core values of socialism. We hope you will not believe in rumors, create rumors, or spread rumors." The comment features a smiling face emoji, leading some users to believe the post is actually an April Fool's joke. But as more netizens commented, the digital thread took a turn. Out of 2,600 comments, all but 12 have since been removed. They were taken down by Beijing's web censors. Some of the deleted posts appear to poke fun at other state-run media outlets. One of them said the CCTV channel commemorates April Fool's Day every day at 7 p.m. There's really no need to honor it separately. The netizen is referring to the pro-Beijing broadcaster's 7 o'clock evening news. Another netizen wrote, "It is stupid to designate a day to deceive people and say that today is Fool's Day. This doesn't conform to China's socialist values. If you want to cheat, you have to cheat every day like the Communist Party-run media. You have to cheat any time in any situation. This is our correct value." Still another posted a short but powerful comment. "Socialism is April Fool's Day every day, okay?" The Chinese regime is suspected to have made up a fake French reporter for its state media. Chinese Communist Party mouthpiece CGTN recently published an article by a person named Lorraine Beaumont. She claims to be the channel's France-based freelance reporter. She writes about China's Xinjiang region. Beaumont's reports deny that genocide and human rights abuses are happening in Xinjiang. But French newspaper Le Monde said on Wednesday that according to the registration information from a French government commission for journalists, this reporter doesn't exist. A senior researcher from U.S.-based think tank NBR Think Tank and another researcher from France-based Strategic Research Foundation both claim that Beaumont doesn't exist. Beaumont writes that she's French and lived in China for 7 years. She also says she has lived in Xinjiang's capital and visited the region twice. She says, quote, "I don't think the Xinjiang that other people describe to me is the one I know." In her reports, Beaumont also claims she used to work in Paris as a journalist. Another CCP mouthpiece, China Radio International, published a commentary from Beaumont on Wednesday. She writes that French lawmakers' plan to visit Taiwan is ridiculous. She encourages them to cancel exchanges with Taiwan. CGTN just got its permit to broadcast in the French language in France. A researcher at French Space Strategic Research Foundation says it is hard to imagine that the Chinese regime is coming up with fake reporters, and he wishes that Beaumont will interview him.
And still to come, President Biden assigns 5 cabinet members to push his infrastructure plan to Congress. He made the assignment during his first meeting with cabinet members. Summer vacation travel is heating up. More and more vacation bookings are helping the industry approach pre-CCP virus levels in some places. All that and more on NTD News. President Biden holds his first cabinet meeting. He kicked it off by touting his infrastructure package, and he also named cabinet members who will spearhead the effort to get that bill passed through Congress. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has more details.
5 cabinet members now appointed to lead Biden's effort to push through his multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure bill. Secretaries of Transportation, Housing, Energy, Labor, and Commerce.
These cabinet members will represent me in dealing with Congress, engage the public in selling the plan.
Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg now backpedaling on his comments that a possible mileage tax and gas tax could be used to pay for the new bill.
No, that's not part of the conversation about this infrastructure bill. So just want to make sure that's really clear. But you will be hearing a lot more details in the coming days about how we envision being able to fund this. And
he says any American making under $400,000 will not see higher taxes, but that means wealthier people in corporate America will face the brunt of the cost. Republicans want to negotiate on infrastructure, but prefer to strip the package of its social welfare agenda and corporate tax hikes.
Let's do an infrastructure bill. Let's don't turn it into a massive effort to raise taxes on businesses and individuals.
But money shouldn't be a concern, says Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo, because she says getting ahead of global competitors is more important.
The question isn't can we afford it, it's how can we afford not to do it. And by the way, we are in a global competition with China, among other countries, but principally China.
Focusing on competition with China is a selling point for the Biden administration to gain support on this package. It could be an effort to gain the badly needed Senate Republican votes. But even with a bipartisan consensus that the U.S. should surpass China economically, the two parties still differ on their starting points with how to handle China. Democrats now saying investing in infrastructure is the way to go. But Republicans have over the years said they're missing the real target.
And they threaten us economically every day. They take our intellectual property, they compete against us unfairly, and they make it extraordinarily difficult for us to come and compete on level terms in their markets. The time has come to stand up to them. President Trump did just that, and he called them out.
So to sell the package from the competing with China angle, Democrats will need to convince Republicans that investing in infrastructure, rather than stopping theft, is the key to stepping up competition with China. Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
And Biden did start Thursday's cabinet meeting by mentioning his infrastructure bill, so it's likely a large part of the discussion revolved around how to push it forward. But details are still unclear as to what exactly was said. Just a few minutes into the meeting, the press was ushered out of the room. The White House tells us more information will come out soon. Hundreds of thousands of Americans will soon be paying a lot more to insure their homes. Houses in flood-prone areas are getting new premiums under a FEMA rule change. It's the first major update to the pricing system in half a century. The revised premiums fall under the agency's National Flood Insurance Program. They will now be based on a property's value and risk of flooding, not just on its elevation in a flood zone. FEMA said it expects 200,000 policies to see large premium increases, while over 1 million will see decreases. The agency says the change makes prices more equitable. The rules take effect this October for new policies and in April of next year for older ones. The program currently provides coverage through more than 5 million policies across the country, but it's been losing money for years and is over $20 billion in debt. Pilots are in demand again at United Airlines. The company said it plans to start hiring pilots after that was put on hold last year. United will bring about 300 pilots on board whose hiring classes were canceled because of the pandemic. But about 1,000 other pilots have been on a voluntary leave of absence since last September. The airline says it's not clear yet how many new pilots it will need down the line. The announcement is the latest sign of recovery for the airline industry, which took a heavy hit from lockdowns and travel restrictions. Are you planning a vacation for the summer? You might want to book your trip soon because some places are already completely booked. NTD's Evelyn Lee reports.
This summer travel season, people are looking to break free from home, and some parts of the travel industry are already booming. The CEO of App in the Air, Bayram Anikov, says it's mostly for two reasons. One of them is accelerated vaccinations.
But the second thing is obviously the spring break and some stimulation from the government.
Data from Madeira shows domestic flights in the U.S. surged in March. But demand has not reached its upper limit yet. All the more reason to book now, according to Anikov.
The number of seats taken by passengers or paying passengers on the aircraft, right now they're about 50 to 60%, while in 2019 it was like 85%.
Which means that airlines are still trying to attract passengers to fill up their seats and cover the operational costs.
But will it go up? Yes, for sure. When? I think by the time the capacities will be on about pre-COVID rates.
And it's mostly leisure travel that's driving the growth. The most popular destinations are still similar to those before pandemic times.
Domestically, Florida for sure, LA and Vegas.
But according to CNBC, more outdoor destinations are becoming popular, and hotels are filling up fast. Greg Henderson, co-owner of the Roxbury at Stratton Falls, has similar advice. He says now is the time to book hotels. Demand is so high at the Roxbury that by mid-April, there won't be any weekend availability left until October. While Club Wyndham told CNBC that 3 of its resorts in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, are nearly fully booked in July. Anikov expects that the travel industry will recover soon.
Assuming the vaccinations rate and the herd immunity projections, I think that we will get to 75% for sure by the end of the summer, compared to for domestic travel compared to 2019.
He says while it might not be back to normal quite yet, he's confident it's getting there domestically. Evelyn Lee, NTD News.
Still to come, the Prime Minister of the Netherlands faces a setback in forming a new session of government. He's accused of lying about discussing a position he wants to give a parliament member. A Belgian chocolate maker plans a unique new flavor for Easter. He says chocolate is a great way to lift the lockdown blues. Find out more on NTD News.
Do you have a life insurance policy you no longer need? Now you can sell your policy, even a term policy, for an immediate cash payment. Call Coventry Direct to learn more.
We thought we had planned carefully for our retirement.
But we quickly realized we needed a way to supplement our income.
Our friends sold their policy to help pay their medical bills. And that got me thinking. Maybe selling our policy could help with our retirement.
I was skeptical, so I did some research and called Coventry Direct. They explained life insurance is a valuable asset that can be sold.
We learned we could sell all of our policy or keep part of it with no future payments. Who knew? We sold our policy. Now we can relax and enjoy our retirement as we had planned.
If you have $100,000 or more of life insurance, you may qualify to sell your policy. Don't cancel or let your policy lapse without finding out what it's worth. Visit CoventryDirect.com to find out if your policy qualifies, or call 1-800-509-8500. Coventry Direct, redefining insurance.
It's just clear as day. The media, whether it's broadcast, cable, or print media, has become extremely biased. And I started looking online for alternative ways to get information. And I saw an ad for a free trial. And I looked at it and I said, Epoch Times. I mean, come on, this is end of days type of stuff. I mean, what are they going to be talking about here? And I said, well, it's a free trial. Let me dig in. Is it giving me both sides? Is it giving me an objective point of view here? I have looked for opportunities to see where they might be biased, and I don't find it. It has given me a level of trust in media that I didn't think I'd ever get back. I love the Epoch Times because it has renewed my faith in the idea that a reliable, responsible, non-biased source of information is available. And I can say that I love it because of that.
It looks like there's more trouble brewing in Europe. Politicians in the Netherlands are not happy with their prime minister and voted to let him know. They say he's lied, while he says his memory failed him.
Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte's chances of forming a new government suffered a major setback on Friday after Parliament passed a motion disapproving of his behaviour and saying he had, quote, not spoken the truth. Lawmakers called for a new independent investigator to oversee preliminary formation talks after the March 17 elections, in which Rutte's Conservative VVD party took the most votes. Rutte, who is acting as caretaker Prime Minister, survived a no-confidence vote and will be allowed to continue in that role as the pandemic continues. The motion was filed by the D66 and Christian Democrat parties, the most likely allies of the VVD party in a future coalition. The formation of the new government has been set back at least several weeks by the affair, and it is no longer clear if Rutte will have the respect needed to lead a fourth cabinet. The crisis deepened Thursday after Rutte acknowledged having privately discussed what job should go to a prominent member of parliament who had been critical of his previous cabinet. Rutte had previously said he did not do so, but notes from a meeting emerged showing that he had. Rutte told Parliament on Thursday, I am speaking the truth. I made a mistake and my memory has failed me. But what I am saying now is true. I'm not lying, and it is up to the Netherlands, the Parliament, and everyone to have an opinion on this.
The Countryside Code is a guidebook for visitors to the rural parts of the UK. A new version has just been published, and it's encouraging people to smile and say hello when they go for a walk in the countryside. NTD's Neil Woodrow has the story.
70 years since the first Countryside Code booklet was published. This latest edition has a few key changes for people, notably, be nice, say hello, and share the space. The code is split into different headings: respect everyone, protect the environment, enjoy the outdoors, and know the signs and symbols of the countryside. It now covers all green spaces, waterways, the coast, and even parks in towns and cities. So what do people think of the emphasis on being outwardly friendly?
When you're out, some people want their own space. They've got their headphones on and, they're enjoying their time. But I like to be out, and yes, I do talk to people with their dogs, or if people have got young children, I sometimes have a chat to them, and, it boosts you up and, you really enjoy being out.
Well, we've always greeted people when we pass them, and some people are more friendly than others. So if we have a code and people are friendly, I think it would really encourage people to enjoy going out and make it a really friendly place. So that would be great.
This gentleman agrees.
I totally agree. I'm one of those friendly people that walk around and I smile, and having a friendly face doesn't cost you anything. So you can.
This update to the code, the first in over a decade, has been guided by nearly 4,000 stakeholder responses to an online survey, which sought views on best practices for visiting the countryside and protecting the natural environment. With the lifting of the lockdown restrictions, a group of 6 can now meet up outdoors, or a group of any number from up to 2 households. So if you're venturing out, follow the country code and smile. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, Epsom, Surrey.
The pandemic has been hard on those of us with an adventurous spirit. But for anyone with an adventurous appetite, a trip to Belgium on your palate rather than a plane may well be the best Easter gift this year. One Chocolatier has a new flavor in store and online.
Belgian chocolate maker Dominique Persone is known for producing unusual flavors. Some unexpected combinations include bacon and fried onions. This year, he offers a special adventure to shoppers, a new taste that reminds people of nature.
So we make a juice of grass, Granny Schmidt, and to put an extra acidity on it, we use the Japanese lime, it's yuzu. And the combination of those two, it's amazing.
Persone is counting on the new flavor to promote his business ahead of Easter. His own shop is in the canal-based historic city of Bruges. Normally, Easter is one of the busiest seasons for local tourism. But now the pandemic and travel bans have kept foreign visitors away.
Here in Bruges, we're very known for chocolate. I think we have more than 60 chocolate shops in town. Most of them are closed because they're really focused on tourism. For us, tourists are very important too, but thanks God we have a lot of local customers. And I think 50% of our customers are local customers. But of course, it's not like a normal year. Eh?
Persone believes chocolate contains a mood-lifting ingredient that counters depression. For his customers, chocolate brings joy and hope to Easter reunions during the gloomy lockdown.
Now I'm gonna buy something for me and my girlfriend because with Corona we're not seeing much of our friends. It's very hard and that makes life a little bit better. So I would say chocolate makes life a bit better.
Belgium is facing a third wave of infections and tighter contact restrictions. Stores are open only by appointment. Non-essential travel is banned over the holiday.
400 years ago, the Mayflower carried a group of Elizabethan-age pilgrims to North America. Now, its modern-day descendant, the Mayflower autonomous ship, is ready to cross the Atlantic.
The Mayflower autonomous ship is a 50-foot trimaran with no passenger or crew on board. It was launched and christened last September, 400 years to the day since the original Mayflower left Plymouth.
It's about as ready as it's going to be from a mechanical and electrical and a power and propulsion perspective. And now we just want to continue to implement the autonomy and stress it and test it and throw things at it that it didn't see before.
The robotic Mayflower was built by the non-profit marine research organization ProMare and computing giant IBM. If successful, the £1 million ship could become the largest ever autonomous vessel to cross the Atlantic. IBM software engineer James Sutton is busy fitting the ship's science pod.
Rather than having so many scientists on board trying to do lots of different jobs, if you can compress that down into a small payload like this, it really takes the stress off the scientists.
The Mayflower is powered by a mix of sun and wind energy with a backup diesel generator. A range of technologies help the boat sense the world around it, including cameras and radar to detect hazards. The vessel also has instruments to measure ocean health, including a tongue to taste seawater chemicals and an acoustic payload to listen for whales and dolphins.
We really need a huge amount of data to be able to actually understand what's going on with the world's oceans, and that's so important. And using just traditional methods alone isn't going to allow us to actually really scale up how we do that.
Now, as in 1620, not everything has gone to plan. The Pilgrims set sail for America from Southampton, but had to stop in Plymouth for repairs before finally setting out. And in 2020, the pandemic delayed construction of the autonomous ship and its transatlantic voyage.
And up next, Poland makes retirement an option for service animals. Around 1,200 dogs and over 60 horses would be affected. Find out more on NTD News. Poland is proposing a new law that would give police dogs and horses the right to a retirement. The bill would provide financial support so that the animals don't need to be sold off to new owners.
Ort the German Shepherd is working on defense training drills with his handler. Police dogs like him need to be in peak condition for fighting crime. They save people from collapsed buildings, track down fugitives, sniff out drugs, and help control rowdy crowds. But what happens when they're too old for their physically and mentally demanding jobs?
This is something we shouldn't be thinking about. It should just be like that. These animals have worked for the state. They have done their jobs well, and they should be entitled to health care and due retirement, on green pastures in the case of horses.
Each year, around 10% of the animals are retired. But the fate of animals depends on the finances and circumstances of the officers they worked with. Some animals end up working in unsuitable roles for private companies, or worse, are sent to the slaughterhouse. But now service personnel are raising their concerns, and the Interior Ministry has proposed an unprecedented bill. If passed, it would grant these animals official status and paid retirement.
I would like to take him after service, but there is no way. I would have to pay for the stable myself. He stays in a stable near Warsaw.
The policy would affect some 1,200 dogs and over 60 horses. It would extend the government's responsibility for the animals into their retirement and secure financial support for the owners. That's to cover daily costs and veterinary care. Hippel is almost blind and relies on the eyes and guidance of his companions at the shelter. Steady government funding would be a real game changer for the animals and their keepers at Poland's only private shelter for decommissioned service animals. The bill is expected to receive unanimous backing when it eventually goes to a vote in Parliament, but there's no timetable for that yet.
Now let's turn our attention to health and wellness. Processed food has completely transformed our diets. We examine what nutrition looked like before that shift and what it looks like now.
Welcome to Strong Mind and Body. I'm Gina Marie. Within the last half century, our food has changed drastically. Things we eat now are not the same as they once were. So what happened? How has our nutrition changed? Let's start by looking at meat, eggs, and dairy. Factory farmed animal products are a huge industry today, but less than 100 years ago they were inconceivable. If you didn't live in a rural setting where you likely raised your own animals, the milkman delivered dairy products from not so far away dairy. Meat and poultry could be purchased from a local butcher who may have even known the animals personally. Growth hormones, antibiotics, and genetically modified feed were never fed to animals. Our recent ancestors were eating the healthiest kind of animal products, those raised on grass, outdoors, and usually with a lot of human love also. Nowadays, of course, that's not the case. More than 10 billion animals will be raised in American factories this year. Most will never see daylight except on their way to the slaughterhouse. They'll live in dark, tiny, and unsanitary conditions where diseases spread rapidly. They'll eat unnatural foods, likely genetically modified corn, that are then loaded with chemicals and drugs that directly impact the humans who eat them. While some farm animals have been bred for tastier cuts of meat or sweeter milk, the drugs they are pumped with diminish their nutrient absorption, which also decreases our ability to extract those nutrients. To eat like your grandparents, look for organic, grass-fed meat, eggs, and dairy. It's even better if you can find a local source also. Let's take a look now at fruits and vegetables. Conventionally raised produce contains far fewer vitamins and minerals than it did half a century ago. You can credit pesticides and chemical fertilizers with disrupting soil quality, and monocrop industrial agriculture for depleting it of vital nutrients. Runoff from the animal factory farms pollutes soil and water, making foodborne illness risks more severe also. Our grandparents and great-grandparents grew up when organic farming was essentially the norm. Crops were cycled to ensure the soil stayed healthy. Now farmers rely on chemical fertilizers, not healthy soil, to make crops grow. That's why it's so important that we support organic farmers, local growers, and grow our own. Because dependence on these inputs isn't just unhealthy, it's also a food security risk. And last but not least, let's look at processed foods. Meals were the cornerstone of our culture in a much different way back in the old days. People still ate real food. It was made from scratch and ingredients were pronounceable. Today, our processed foods resemble anything but their original ingredients. Nearly 80% of all processed foods in the United States contain genetically modified ingredients. They are also full of artificial colors, flavors, and sweeteners. They are stabilized with trans fats and chemical preservatives and then packaged into plastics that have been known to cause cancer and birth defects. In his book Food Rules, author and food expert Michael Pollan writes that the only junk food we should eat should be what we make ourselves. If we can make that type of commitment to eliminate processed, fast food and junk food, except for the occasion when we want to make a Twinkie from scratch, we should be able to maintain the healthy relationship with food that our ancestors took for granted. Thanks for watching.
And that's all for now. Catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. I'm Kevin Hogan.
Don't miss out on important news. Our videos are being deleted. So if you don't want to be cut off from honest news, take a moment to sign up for our newsletter at newsletter.ntd.com so you don't lose access to NTD. Go to newsletter.ntd.com to sign up for our evening newsletter.